I probably should have invited a guest on to do this one, an actual traveler, but I think I've been doing this long enough that I think I can wing this one on my own because I talk to so many people. Today on Travel Evolve, we're going to talk about what to bring on an assignment. It's a fundamental episode, but I love some comments. I love some feedback on this one because I think I've got this down, but you guys will certainly tell me if I don't. We're going to talk about all the things you may or may not have thought of that even if you're a veteran traveler, you may not have thought of some of the things we're going to cover today that might make your assignment a little bit more enjoyable. So what to bring on assignment on today's edition of Travel Evolved. This is Travel Evolved. Welcome to the episode. I'm laughing. Man, side note, what a crazy week this has been. I've got my Halloween kind of, did it purposely. I'm a dork. I put this on purpose because I think my timing is right that we're going to be releasing this episode right around Halloween and maybe a little early, so happy early Halloween if that's the case. Hopefully I'm not late. If it was, I hope you had a great Halloween. There, I covered my bases. But man, what a week. I don't know if other agencies are experiencing the same thing that mine is, but I think travelers are starting to figure this out. I don't believe that it's, what we're doing here. Again, I'm trying not so hard not to promote my company or any company. I think that still takes away from what we're doing here. If I start advertising for the agency that I'm the CEO of, I just think it takes away credibility. I've always felt that way. So I'm trying not to. Now, that doesn't mean that my agency isn't going to use some of this stuff, for clips and whatnot. But as far as this podcast goes, I really want to let it and have it stay, freestanding. That's going to get tougher as you start delving into what we're doing. Like I said, as you guys know, I record every Friday what happened during the week so that in time we're going to be able to go back. And I've got a really good plan for that. We're going to still continue talking about that. But it's man, I think travelers are starting to figure this out. I will tell you guys, we've got a slightly different approach, to say the very least, to healthcare staffing. And I think that our approach is one that makes sense to a lot of people. I certainly hope it does. And travelers are starting to figure it out. I mean, they really are, which is exciting to me that you guys are accepting that, maybe the way we've been doing things for 30 some years needs a change. And gosh darn it all, we're giving it one. So anyway, let's jump into this episode because, I appreciate all of you guys. I don't want to spend too much time, but I'm just telling you that it is, it's been a wild week. I hope all of you travelers out there are experiencing a very similar, situation that you too are getting multiple offers. You're getting lots of great offers, whether it's location or pay rate, that those two things are coming together and you're happy because, man, it seems like there's a lot of people that are kind of getting what they're wanting right now, and they're getting it fast and getting it quickly. So, okay, what to bring an assignment? First and foremost, again, I'm not going to make this episode too terribly long. We'll talk a little bit more toward the end about some other fun stuff, but I think the first thing that I'm going to tell you guys is that you should be keeping track. I don't care if it's a little notebook. These are wonderful. I don't know if you guys know how wonderful your personal phone is, your smartphone, but they do all kinds of things like tell you when there's jobs out instantly without having to wait for somebody to hopefully remember to get to you. I'm in an ornery mood today. You can put notes on these things. In other words, if you get to an assignment, the things we're going to talk about today, you can put them in your phone. You can have a tablet if you really prefer that sort of an avenue. You can have some things that say, hey, by the way, here is what I want to bring. And what I like about the phone option, or even a tablet, I guess, doesn't matter, is that if there's something you think of on this particular assignment you can go to, you can make a note. And I would urge you to do that. I'm certainly not going to cover everything that you guys need to take on an assignment with you. It just is impossible. Again, I'm not a traveler. Last time I checked, and the last time you guys definitely knew, and I remind myself that all the time. But the fact is that if you're on assignment and you forget something, there's something that's kind of maybe unique to that location. I don't even know what that would be. You can put a note and say, hey, next time I'm in this climate, next time I'm in this, close to water, whatever you're looking at, you can put it in there and you can go through your list and say, on this assignment coming up now, is there something that I should be taking along that's specific that I wouldn't, be part of my normal, repertoire of what I take on an assignment? I think that's going to be important. It's one of the first things on this particular episode that I want to mention is keep it kind of a journal, so to speak. And again, I'm kind of a fan of this stuff because most of us don't go anywhere without this thing being on our hip. Unfortunately, you guys have those shifts where I know you get in a little bit of trouble for it. I know you're smart about it, but truly, when you're getting in your car, when you're on break, when you're on a day where you're off, they probably, like me, barely leave your side, which kind of sucks. I hope that history doesn't look back at our generation at this time by going, man, that was the cell phone era, but who knows what's coming. But it certainly is kind of the cell phone era. So keep some sort of journal or note that reminds you of some things, including maybe your big main list that we're going to talk about, or just some kind of unusual things that you may not have thought of, or certainly things that we don't cover on this episode. So here's the first thing I want to kind of throw out there. The obvious aspect is you got to look at climate. Again, we are here in the fall. I'd already mentioned it's Halloween. We're in the fall. So there's a lot of climate changes that are happening over the next couple of months, depending on where you're going to go. If you're staying south, even that has a climate change that's happening, a seasonal change. It is, I lived in the panhandle of Florida, and it snowed there one year when I was in college down there. Barely, and it stayed for a good 45 minutes. Everyone was running around like they'd never seen it before. Many of my friends hadn't. So there's a big difference between the panhandle of Florida, between Tallahassee, let's say Pensacola, than there is obviously between South Beach and the Keys. If you're in a place that does and is about to experience some cooler weather, again, this stuff is all going to be like, duh, Mark, I know this, but I just want to do an episode so that you guys are thinking about it. Take the right appropriate amount of seasonal clothes for where you're going to go. And it does become difficult. If you had, let's say, gone down to, let's just keep my example, the panhandle of Florida, back in the beginning of September or in the middle of September, and you were there and you didn't take something with some jackets, some jeans, some longer pants, some sweaters, or whatever you're going to, layers, you could find yourself thinking, well, it's Florida, and you didn't prepare for, what would potentially be October and November and maybe into December, then that's the kind of thing we're talking about. Clearly, the more extreme, the more further north you get, the more that's going to come into play. Again, if you're going an assignment in Michigan, there are days up in that state where it is bitter cold coming up right now. If you're listening to this assignment and you're about ready to accept one, hopefully you guys are taking full advantage of the holidays. I think there's some great revenue to be made there. Kind of a side note. You're clearly going to be going to some assignments if you're leaving right now that are going to go into some of the coldest times during the year, no matter what part of the country you live in. For some of you that are going someplace, further north, that's going to be a pretty extreme difference in temperature. But obviously Southern California, even Arizona, temperatures change over the next period of time. So again, look at the time of year you're going and really, truly consider where it is that you're going. On that note, I will tell you, I believe, and I've even heard this yesterday or today, I can't remember, I was talking to somebody about this, but there's a huge difference in the same temperature, whether it's a dry climate or more of a wet climate. It was today. One of my people that just took assignment with us is going to go, I can't remember, she's going to go to Wyoming, and she loves it there. And she said, I love it because it's dry cold. It's not like if you go to Wisconsin or Minnesota. She's absolutely right. This is a person, I think, from Louisiana or Arkansas. And she gets it. She understands that you're not going to be quite as cold in Wyoming, believe it or not, in the middle of December, January, or February, as you are going to be in Wisconsin, northern Minnesota, upstate New York, Maine, Michigan, Pennsylvania, all those areas at the same time of year. It is going to be bone chilling there. A good 15 degrees of humidity, or is not degrees, but a little bit more of humidity can change that temperature by what feels like about 15 degrees to you. And that's a big, big difference. Okay, I think enough of that. Obviously, we're still talking about things like, and this is just the complete, ridiculously obvious thing I'm going to tell you, is that also kind of plan for where you're going to be. You don't want to be someplace that you're missing out on an opportunity. You have to go out and buy something. Again, going back to our episode where we talked a lot about creating a business mindset, I'd hate to see you go somewhere where, let's say here in Colorado, where you want to go ski or snowshoe, or someone invites you to do a snowmobiling trip, or you just want to go up to some of the resorts, and you've got to now go out and spend some of that precious revenue, and now you've got an operating expense, to go back to that episode, and you're spending money that you shouldn't have spent because you just forgot to take something. So also consider where you're going. I mean, I will tell you that when I go to the California office, I am preparing for a good 2 weeks before I go. Now, I'll admit, I don't pack because I've traveled a lot like you guys, so I'm pretty good at it. But as far as, is there something I want to bring? Is there anything that I really wanted to have there last year? So I start looking through the surfboards, the snowboard, the snowboards, the surfboards, GoPros, some of the, when the kids were little, I used to make sure I was taking a lot of the, the slam balls and that sort of thing. But all of the things that, we have here in Colorado, even right down to our Tommy Bahama beach chairs, because they're expensive. I don't want to buy any when I get out there. I take them with me so that A, they're not sitting there in the rusty salt water all year, but that I don't forget them. So all those things I'm taking with me. You guys need to do the same thing. Think about what you might want to do. I mean, if you're a hiker and you've got to make sure you don't want to go out and spend a ton of money, like I'm saying, on buying things so that you can have fun while you're on assignment. It makes no sense. Okay, emergency items. Clearly, I'll tell you this. Obviously, don't forget your medicine. Don't forget, if you can nowadays, try to load up on a prescription. That a lot of travelers tell me that obviously it's just an inconvenience. Having to have a prescription, sent to a brand new location, possibly even a completely different drugstore chain, is difficult. And I've had travelers tell me that they've left and literally went, oh, I've got 5 of whatever an asthma pill, or an albuterol, or an ADD medicine, whatever you take. You want to load up. Talk to your doctor. Get a physical before you go. It's kind of one of those things you want to do, and see, is there something I need to stock up on? So maybe you're going someplace very rural. Maybe you're going Hawaii, Alaska, someplace like that, and you want to have as much of that prescription as you possibly can to give yourself some time for refill potential. I know it's kind of a no-brainer, but I know it seems like it's something you wouldn't forget, but that's why we're doing the episode, to make sure that you don't. Those kinds of things. I always tell you to pack your car. We did an episode a long, long time ago, one of the very first ones, about safety on the road. I will tell you that part of that is going to be, to have a great first aid kit. I mean, I take things, I'm always hurting myself, so I take, straps and, my massage gun that I use. I swear by that thing. Little things that you don't think about. So what I start doing as I'm going either to the Colorado office or the California offices, I start thinking about, what am I doing every day? Oh, I'm using that massage gun. I need it. So, and especially on this shoulder. So I'm going to go make sure I put that someplace that when it comes to time, I didn't leave it back, in one of the offices, and I don't have to go out and buy a second one because they're not cheap. Things like that start to consider as you're getting closer to heading out to your assignment. Make sure that you start putting the things in that you need all the time, no matter what that is for you. I've had people that said they got Invisalign and forgot their retainer. Okay, seems like you wouldn't think about it because you're putting it in your mouth. I think for those who have that, about every other night or every single night or frequently. So it's not unusual to forget something like that. But talk about crazy. One gal told me she did that, and it cost her $600 to go quickly to a dentist office where she was to get a mold made. And by the time the retainer came in, her teeth had already started moving, and she said it was really painful for about 3 or 4 days. So again, I know this seems silly. This episode may not seem like it's right one, but this is 23 years of experience and 23 years of stories of me reminding you guys things that you probably already know. Maybe this episode is for more new people, but I think everyone should hear it because there's a lot of stuff here. Okay, so things like that you just forget. Again, I think it's a great idea to start to begin to throw some things on a table, a kitchen table, that you're like, boy, I'm using this a lot. I don't want to forget that. Me with some recording equipment, right? I'm lucky enough. You can't see, but I've got 3 or 4 mics around here because we did at one point have multiple people recording. So I take an entire studio with me and I start putting that aside because I'm lucky enough I have 2. So I start packing that up a long time in advance. So, all right, favorite items. Things you can't find. I oftentimes go back to, all right, for me, it's certain supplements that I can get through Amazon. Certainly I can order things to a new address, but if you have a favorite, I don't know what it would be, something that it's local to you where you are at home, and I don't care if it's a commodity, a food item, take it with you. Take a bunch of it with you. Things that you just can't live without. Something that's a favorite of yours, whether it be, and oftentimes it is. It's something where, that we all are creatures of habit with what we eat. If there's something you really, really can't do without, don't forget it. Hopefully you're going to discover some new things on the new assignment, which is what I'm really hoping that you do. But there are some favorite things that you're used to and that you use all the time that probably are not going to be available on a new assignment. So make sure you grab them and take it with it. All right. So one of the first things I learned when I first got in this crazy industry, and it still is so important today, and I think most of you guys do this. If you don't, consider taking like what people describe to me as a large bin, those clear ones with the plastic lids, with linens, scrubs, those kinds of things, dishware, things that you need everywhere. Let's talk about the first and the last one first. Linens, again, a lot of people, don't like to go to, let's say it is an Airbnb and you want your own sheets. I understand that. Let's say you're going to someplace that's maybe, you found it someplace else and you're not 100% sure the quality. I think towels, linens, those kinds of things, pillowcases are incredibly important to take, and a lot of veteran travelers have that kind of bin laid out. They put in their trunk, they put in the back of their SUV every time that they go on assignment, and they've got it ready to go. And the same thing sometimes in there, and it kind of works together. Works well together to have dishes and some silverware. Yeah, your place may say that they have it, but I don't know. Listen, there are certain wine glasses that I just enjoy drinking out of, and they're some of my favorite wine glasses, depending upon if I'm drinking red or white. I know this sounds silly, and maybe it is, but you get someplace and it's just like, that doesn't right. Or there's a certain kind of coffee mug you like. These are the kind of things that you should be putting inside those linens, taking with you, and having that kind of bin or bins that's your mainstay staple that you're taking on every single assignment, even if you're using an RV. So all this stuff applies to that too. I mentioned scrubs. Again, I've got, hopefully I got travelers that have, probably every color in the book. I'll finish that thought. Hopefully every single company that you guys are working for is giving you a heads up on what your color of scrubs are. Listen, I will defend all of us and say sometimes we literally get those at the 11th hour. It's kind of one of those things they tend to hold back on us until you're fully credentialed. We're not going to give you first day instructions and then, potentially where to report and even your scrub color until you've got all your TBs and all your, baloney online, orientation, like I mentioned a few times ago. They're going to hold that over your head. So as you, go on in your travel, healthcare world, most of you start collecting almost every color scrub that there is. So make sure you've got some of those with you and you can pick the right colors out and make sure you're double, triple check that they're right, because those, as you guys know, and I'll tell you, are incredibly expensive. You don't want to get to that assignment and have to go out and order a bunch of royal blue scrubs because that's what your unit uses there when you had 3 pairs sitting at home and you just goofed up or you had to take off early. That's tough. That's a tough lesson to learn. And again, my goal on this episode is to try to get it so that you are never taking anything out of your pocket and spending money, because again, that's an expense and you're trying to keep that revenue going in your pocket as long as possible. Here's one you guys may not have thought of, and you might not even need it, but it's nice to have it. 2 things. One of them is a mobile hotspot. I don't care if you're driving through a rural part of the country, they're nice to have. You can listen to wonderful podcasts and things like that when you're driving. For me, honestly, it's a lot about music, as you guys know. I don't want to have to go to a recorded playlist or be without, my Wi-Fi where I can listen to one of my streaming services that has the music that I want, or even things that I've actually saved on there. That's nice. Plus, when you get there, it may have sketchy or even, subpar Wi-Fi. This is a great way to, if you have to, let's say you're doing, something where you've got to get ready to go for your next assignment and you're getting prepared and you've got your resume you're working on, or you're applying to jobs and that sort of thing. You want to make sure that things aren't glitchy. So a hotspot's a great thing to have. I know it sounds maybe like it wouldn't be something we'd be talking about in basically the fourth quarter of 2022, but I still take one. I didn't use it once this summer, but I take it with me every time. I've got one, over in the studio that's in the corner. So I use a hotspot on rare occasions, but I always have one with me. The other thing I was going to mention, I said, two things. The second thing really is one of those, a charger for your cell phone that isn't, an electric charger. Some of them are done by the sun. You can charge them by solar power. Some of them are actually battery, where you can throw in a couple of 9 volts or a couple of double or AAA batteries, and it can give you a charge in an emergency. I love those for safety. I love those for those times where, and again, I don't know about you guys, but it feels like more and more as time goes by and your phones get a little older, they tend to, keep a battery longer. So you're not going to be stuck, coming home from a shift when you had your phone, maybe you forgot to turn it off and it was in your locker, or you were carrying it, and also you're like, oh gosh, I got to go, and I don't have my charger. These are great safety devices, and also great just things to have is a solar and a battery powered phone charger. Just one of those little things that I like to talk about. Let's jump into some food stuff, because I'm going to talk about some healthy eating, that sort of thing. A little 1 or 2 serving crock pot. Yes, they do exist. And here's me telling you to take a crock pot with you. I love this avenue, especially this time of year coming up. Not so much in the middle of summer. Many of you probably do use a crock pot in the middle of summer. I find that I don't really like to eat hot things like that, or all-inclusive meals. But man, talk about inexpensive. Talk about can be extremely healthy, super affordable, and ready when you get back to your Airbnb or your residence when you're done with your shift. You can get up a little bit earlier. You can throw some things on it, put it on super low, because I know most of you guys are doing a 12-hour shift, and you've got a healthy, easy, cost-effective meal, and it takes up a very little space. And I've seen travelers put things inside the crock pot, so you're really only taking up the space that the crock pot is, and stuffing it with some other things, whether it's clothes or spices, whatever you need to. You can throw some of your washcloths and towels in there maybe. But I love pressure cookers, crock pots, even some of the smaller air fryers I've seen now. There are almost everything that is single serving. Even people I've seen take microwaves, because as you guys know, sometimes a place you're staying may not be fully stocked. Hopefully you know that before you go, because I can't see microwaves being that small. But a little air fryer, a little crock pot, or a pressure cooker are wonderful ways to kind of get something small in your car that I think is going to pay off dividends financially, health-wise, and convenience-wise for you on that entire assignment. I just think it's a super important one. I'm going through these quick, I know, because I'm amped up today. It's been nuts. I can't seem to slow this down because it's been that fun of a day. I don't have a lot of days oftentimes where I'm at, wow, what a fun day. I mean, in my job and my line of work, most of my day is spent putting out fires and making sure people are doing their jobs effectively and better. And for lack of a better word, it's handling some of the tougher stuff that makes its way to me. So when I have a really fun day, it's great. And today, this week, these last couple weeks, now I'll tell you, I put in almost 2 consecutive 15-hour days. And we were working both remotely and at the office. And I still think it's fun. I mean, that may be crazy. A double day, 2 days in a row. And I loved it. I loved every second of it because it's fun. And I know I'm going on a tangent, but it is so much fun to bring some new technology and some excitement back into healthcare staffing, where for almost 23 years I've seen very little to zero change. So I'm charged up, in case you can't tell. I'm fired up, in case you can't tell. I'm having a lot of fun in this industry for the first time, certainly for a long time. When things start clicking and you're starting to hit some good responses, and I think you're making a difference in travelers' lives and their financial situation, it's a good feeling for sure. So, all right, let's get back to it, because I'm off my little kick now. One of the things that people have told me a lot about, and I want to document it here, is cleaning supplies. Many of you have told me that you get dinged pretty darn hard when you leave a place, even though you kind of felt like you cleaned it. And then you've got to go out and spend a whole bunch of money for a bottle, a can, the different things you're buying, and you're going to throw them away. You're going to use what you need and get rid of it. No, smart travelers are taking a lot of this stuff with them, provided they've got the room. It's just one of those things. It's a cleaning bucket, for lack of a better word. Almost every traveler that I've gotten into this conversation with has said either do it or what a great idea to have something that's going to clean the kitchen, going to clean the bathrooms for you. It's going to, people do take little mini vacuums. They don't have it, but mostly those things that you're going to get dinged the heaviest with, which is going to be kitchen and bathroom cleaning. When you leave a place and vacate it, you want to make sure that at least you've done your best to reduce or eliminate that cleaning fee. I know that sometimes they're going to charge you a cleaning fee no matter what, but you don't want that to go higher than what it is. I mean, I've seen $150 just to clean an oven that you didn't even use. So on a side note, make sure you check off your list on things that are dirty before you get there. So it's kind of one of those things. Okay, here's one that I think is pretty fundamental for any veteran traveler, but anybody that's new that's listening to me. Most veteran travelers will take a notebook or a binder or some sort of a dossier that has every single certification, licensure, medical immunization, or copies of those, including flu shots this time of year, with them on assignment. I know your company has them. I know you sent PDFs you trust, and they should have sent those off to either the vendor who then sends them to the facility or directly to the facility. You guys know things happen. There is nothing better than to have that in your car. You're on your first day orientation or right in the middle of your assignment, and someone says, we never got your flu shot. You either need to wear a mask or go get another one. And you say, you know what? I've got it in my car. When I go on my break, I'll bring it back in. You walk into the nurse staffing office, the HR, wherever it is that they're asking you to bring it. And you say, boom, here it is, and you walk away. That's a veteran move. Same thing with having your resume on your phone or having your resume on your computer if you're taking a laptop. I mentioned a few episodes ago, I think it was, that you should always be updating and prepping for your next assignment. When you're 2 or 3 or 4, actually more than that, when you're about 4 to 6 weeks out, you should be putting this assignment that you're currently on your resume. You guys have the time. What happens to so many of you is that you wait till the 11th hour and then you realize, oh my gosh, I've got 1 or even 2 assignments that maybe I was here for 6 months. My agency doesn't have those. Maybe you're switching agencies and you've now got to go back and ask, can you do that? And most recruiters won't. If they do, it's going to be a different font. It's going to look bad. Take that upon yourself and use that time to go through and update that resume. Have it with you in a hard version, not in a soft version or in any kind of a folder. That's going to be important. But it kind of goes along with all that. All of your certs, your medical, your immunization, make sure you're carrying copies with it and make sure that you're taking the time to update your resume and getting some references. Just another little side note, it has nothing to do with what they're bringing, but when you're working on your resume, go back to that manager, go back to a coworker, a charge nurse, and say, hey, charge, I'm saying nursing, but somebody who's in charge of your department, if you're allied, and say, hey, can you write me a quick reference? Because that is going to help you garner a new assignment more than anybody else. Here's the last assignment I was on. I've got 2 references from 2 different people, and I'm ready to go because I've got my resume up to speed, and I'm moving on and moving quick. Whew. Did I cover everything? I think I did. I know this was probably one of the fastest episodes. There's a reason behind that. I just haven't had time to record, and I wanted to knock this one out. And I was running out of time, and I promised you guys we would get some things going. But this also was a great choice this week because there was not a lot to really talk about. I just wanted to bring a few things in there that maybe you guys hadn't thought about previously. Obviously, if you're an RVer, the whole episode changes its dynamic. But think about what to take on assignment. If you're brand new, listen to this episode. Maybe go back and rewind it because I know I talked like a banshee and very quickly on this one. But also talk about this with your other veteran fellow travelers. They're going to have a lot better ideas, which is why originally I said maybe I should bring somebody else on this episode. But I feel like I kind of covered it, and hopefully, besides the glaringly obvious ones, there may have been 1 or 2 things here that maybe you didn't thought about before. But keep a journal, and when you forget something, you have to go out and buy something. Add that into wherever it's going to be. Let that go with you from now on every assignment, and think about the things that you should have brought, and put a note down in your phone on what to go with. So. Okay, like I said, it has been a crazy week. I want to talk a little bit quickly and very briefly about just some current things. I've talked to, by the way, I've added a whole bunch of new systems into the company that I work for. And that's been great because it seems to me like they're saying we're needing help. What it looks to me like from an economic side of things, I just want to bring this up at the end of this episode, is that we are starting to get a little bit higher demand and our supply is going down. What I'm guessing, and this is a pretty educated guess, but it is a guess, we've got some seasonality coming in like we always talk about on Travel Evolved. We are definitely moving into the cold and flu season. I haven't heard anything about it being bad. I do know that I have heard that winters in the Midwest and even here in Colorado where I'm going to be, there's going to be a lot of snow this year. So there's going to, it's just one of those winters that's going to have a lot of snow and a lot of accumulation. So that's going to be the case. That's going to be there. So we're going to pay attention to that. Obviously, as we continue to move into, going into more of the economics, it looks like less and less travelers are out there. In other words, more and more travelers are actually leaving and heading out of what I think was a very temporary and short-lived travel career. That may not be making sense to you guys, but I said a long time ago that I felt that travelers were jumping in when the pandemic hit just to chase some big bucks. I said that a year and a half ago, that I didn't believe that a lot of them, not all of them, that a lot of them are going to stay. So I was worried about the saturation of that market from your standpoint. I felt there was going to be more competition. I felt like things were going to get a little tighter for some of you. It wouldn't affect the veteran traveler, but some younger, and I mean younger with travel experience, travelers would have a slightly more difficult time with the competition factor. So I'm patting myself on the back for guessing that. What I didn't know, and I'll kick myself in the for not knowing this or thinking about this, was when a lot of people left the healthcare industry. And you guys know what I'm talking about. There was a lot of systems that were forcing people to either become vaccinated or leave, and we all know darn well that a lot of people said they weren't going to do it. I said at the time that all opinion on that aside, it is going to affect in a negative way for people that need care, I'm talking about me, but potentially in a positive way for those of you that stuck it out and either found assignments that didn't require that, waited, or went ahead and either were always or decided to get vaccinated. It just is what it is. It actually reduced somewhat the population of healthcare providers and certainly the population of traveling healthcare providers, like it or not. And again, there's no, this is not about an opinion. It is the truth. There was a portion that is not with us in healthcare and in traveling healthcare that was a year ago. And it was right about a year ago when some of these things came through. So I think a lot of this is coming into play and we're seeing it now. One of my engineers with our company, software engineer, said, relatively new into our industry, but said, "What have you seen? What's this like yearly?" And I said, "This has been the last 3 years has been the craziest, most inconsistent and non-traditional years I've ever seen in healthcare staffing. Typically, there is a couple of lulls during a year in the fall and in the spring when things are just slightly kind of in flux because the South doesn't know when the season's going to start or end, if that makes sense. So in the fall, how cold is it going to be? When's it going to start? And therefore, it shows, everyone runs down to those warmer climates and the nicer climates, and then when there's needs in the northern parts of the United States, there's less people to go there, and the same thing kind of reverses itself in the spring. All of a sudden, things spread out. There's truly less travelers in every area that are willing to go. So it's just summers and winters seem to have the biggest needs. The middle, for those 5 months each time, it's only usually a month or so in between those that we saw. Typically for 20 years, I guess, is a little bit of a lull. Well, obviously, what we saw last late winter, early spring was a just complete knockdown of bill rates, of hospital needs, and it took a while for the supply of travelers to catch up with that. And I think that's what we're starting to see now. I think a lot of them said, "I'm tired. I'm not. First of all, I'm not going to go to work for these ridiculously low $3,000 a week jobs," which for some of us make us go, "Boy, things certainly have changed, haven't they?" That's just the way it is. Some people that were in it for that high of dollars, and I think many of them thought that would be that way forever. A lot of you that are still with us are still hoping for that. Who knows? Your guess is as good as mine. By the way, I'm still seeing plenty of $3,000 and even $4,000 a week positions because of what we're talking about today. So Yeah, again, as you guys know, the bigger the bill rate, the more everybody should win, with the exception of the hospitals. That's just a fact. If you have a company that is keeping their margins identical, where the bill rate is 150 or their bill rate is an $80 bill rate, if their margin stays the same, I think that's a good company. They're doing it right, because what I saw, as I've told you guys many times, is that the bigger the bill rate, the company margins were kind of squeaking up there for a little bit for some people, because they felt like they could get away with that and you guys wouldn't notice because the money was so good. I think now the great thing about what I'm seeing is that a lot of those agencies are being held a little more accountable, being forced to be a little more honest about what they are, because there's a competition factor between all of us that nobody wants to send someone off to a facility and have them be the lowest paying agency that all the travelers are talking about. And you guys should talk. So anyway, just a quick little synopsis of what I'm seeing. It's cool out there right now. I think a great time to be a traveler. I think that if you are looking for an assignment, even a month ago, I think was more tough than what we're seeing right now. And again, this is, let's just say, toward the end of October that we are going to be releasing this episode. So things have picked up here in the early part of October, let's just say, potentially, when we're recording this. So good sign of things to come for travelers as far as demand, which also oftentimes means more options and oftentimes means a higher pay rate if you're willing to chase those assignments that oftentimes demand a high pay rate. For many of you, you're going to chase the lower paying, nicer assignment. You've earned it. You deserve that. Go someplace where the weather is nice or there's something really wonderful you can do. You guys have earned it. And while you're doing it, make sure you pack accordingly and you know what to bring on an assignment. Guys, I appreciate it as always. I'll catch you next time on Travel Evolved.